Hello and welcome to our tutorial. You'll probably remember this from our other tutorial where we actually built this. We did that in class. So we made this cup and this board. And if you remember, it's literally a camera, a cup and a board, and a light. What we're going to look at in this tutorial is environmental lighting and environmental backgrounds. So with no further ado, let's go on and do that. So with my camera selected, I'm going to press 0. Let me turn my screencasting on here, and I'm going to turn on lock camera to view and then reposition the camera. Now, normally what you're trying to avoid is revealing too much of the background, because it takes a long time to make environments. But in this instance here, we're going to put in a picture in the background, and we could put in any picture, but in this instance I'm going to use which picture am I going to use? This one here. So this is a picture of Bray. That's Bray Head there in the background, which is on the east coast of Ireland if you're not from roundabouts, and that's me there kneeling down taking the photo. So this is was taken on a Gear 360 camera, a Samsung camera, which are very cheap now. They're only about 160 quid. It's a 4K image, and we can use this to light up and change our image in Blender. So with no further ado, let's jump in and do that. So I'm going to click first of all on environments, and when we started in Blender, this was on Blender render, not on Cycles render. So this is we're inherited this world material that doesn't use nodes. So let's click use nodes. This is our node editor, but we have no nodes, and that's because in the node editor it's set to materials for objects, and what we want is materials for environments. So all I did there was click on this little icon. So here's my environment. If I change the color, I change the color of the environment. Now that looks, we could use that as an image. Not photorealistic, but interesting. So what we're going to do here is load in our background image. So we're going to go input texture, but instead of an image texture, we're going to say it's environmental texture. When I connect it, it'll go purple to indicate there's no image, and then we'll go open, downloads, and there's my picture there. So now we have our background loaded in. Now keep in mind what we have here is it looks quite well, I think, already. But that's because the camera has a very shallow depth of field, which we set up in the previous tutorial. If we turn the depth of field off, this would all be sharp. We'd see all the details in it. But I'm quite happy to leave it the way it is. It would make no sense visually for the depth of field to be set in the scene and not in the photo, or any sort of combination of that. So let's see what we can do here. So first things first, let's give ourselves some controls for this background image. So I'm going to go to color and RGB curves and add that in. Now what that does is it just lets us make things brighter, make things darker, and everywhere in between. So it just gives us a little bit of control over the image that we wouldn't otherwise have. And also, just to show you how to do this, if I want to be able to rotate that image, or in any direction, I can go vector mapping. Now this will disappear for a second when I connect it, and then I need to add in a texture coordinate input. So I'm going to go from generated to vector. Now, what that allows us to do with this mapping node allows us to rotate the image. So as you can see here, I can rotate to the left, so we're looking more towards the harbour wall, or I can rotate more to the right, where we're looking out more across the harbour towards Bray Head. And I can try and rotate my horizon so that it's a bit flatter. Maybe we'll leave it like that we're looking off towards the horizon. So this is great. So we can add in, we've got our light, that's from the lamp that we'd already added in, and we've got our environment loaded in, and we can control its color. So I could, click on blue and increase sort of the blue content of it if I was trying to get kind of a nighttime scene. Or if I wanted, I could hit X on that. I could try and make it more, I can increase the reds in it, make it a bit warmer. Is it maybe at sunset? We add in a bit of blue there as well. So we can have all sorts of fun with this. So these RGB curves, we can shift all the color together, or red, green, or blue separately. And with the mapping node, we can manipulate the image and rotate it. So now let's have a look. Let's go back to the cup, and so I have the cup selected. You can see it here in the outliner, it's selected. And I'm going to go down here to, instead of looking at environmental nodes, add object nodes. So here is the cup. So I'm just going to turn all of these to 0, and we'll have a little chat about some of them. We're not going to use them all, but we'll definitely use a good few. So this is my porcelain, well, it's meant to be a porcelain mug. This is my mug. If I change the metallic setting on it, and let's put it all the way up to full, so I've got a mug that is completely made of metal and is reflecting light, and hence we've got all these fireflies. So it would be unlikely that you would have an item that would be that metallic. However, about here you could have a very kind of highly polished piece of porcelain, and we can change or increase the specularity, and that's how the light sort of catches the edges of this. And you can see we've got more of an outline there, and we'll bring that back a little bit as well. Again, we'll try not to do sort of extreme versions of it. If I increase the roughness, I'll diffuse this sort of this shine a bit, because the surface will literally diffuse the light as it hits it. So now I've increased the roughness a lot, and that pattern's almost gone now, the reflectiveness. So again, it's about trying to find a happy medium between what it looks like. But we can, with these settings, we can emulate an awful lot of tech, or like sort of material types, be it plastic or porcelain or a whole bunch of things. So I'm going to bring my roughness back a little bit. And then this one here is for if you ever look at the bottom of a frying pan, it's got loads of, it's metallic, so it reflects light, but it's got lots and lots of grooves on, like on a record, and it can distort light in a particular kind of spherical way. So I don't know if you can see the effect it has on my circle here, but it sort of throws out the reflections a bit, and gives them a slight distortion. And then some of these are fairly straightforward in terms of what they do. So this is the sheen of the cup, and this kind of clear coat it's an interesting effect. It's like as if I've varnished the cup. That's the sort of effect it's trying to give you. So again, we don't want that too much, because we're already getting a whole load of reflections. So by changing these settings, we can really get kind of down and dirty with the type of material that the cup has, and get all sorts of interesting effects. So let's try and make it not too weird. And let me take this off, and the sheen off, and yeah, we'll go with something like that. Now, the last thing I want to look at is a subsurface scattering. Now, if you have a material that certain types of plastic are completely opaque, so if you shine the light behind them, you can't see the light. So really think of a very black piece of plastic that's on your dashboard in your car. You can't see your engine through it. There's no transparency to it. And if you had a very bright light behind it, you wouldn't see that bright light. It just can't get through the plastic. But then other pieces of plastic are highly transparent. So what subsurface scattering does is it tries to emulate the way light travels through the kind of the top of some materials. So it sort of penetrates into the material. So you can imagine shining a light behind your ear, maybe. So your ear, you can't see through it, but you might be able to see the glow of the light from behind. So we'll have a look at what this does. So we're going to increase subsurface scattering, and you can see that it's letting the light in, but the color it's using is this one here, which doesn't sort of suit us. So I'm going to click that, and then use my color picker and pick this sort of sky here. And what it's trying to emulate is that it's like a piece of porcelain or something. It's kind of slightly porous and letting the light through. So we don't want too much of that. We'll add in just a little bit. And it should give a slight sense of sort of a softer edge to it, as if the light, so the light's not kind of pinging off a really hard surface, that it's slightly penetrating the surface. Okay, so enough playing with that. So I'm going to go to solid mode now, and I'm just going to very quickly, and again we did this in class, I'm going to make a glass. So I'm going to make a plane, go to edit mode, merge all of the vertices. We will extrude, and that's enough there, yeah. And make a little wine glass, and extrude back down here. And again, like I said, I'm not kind of describing this technique because we've already covered how to do this. Again, this is more for demonstration purposes than anything else, so if this isn't perfect, I don't really mind. So select it all, go from the top, and we will spin it, and we want to spin it 360 degrees, and we'll give it 32 segments. We'll go to solid mode, we'll select it all, and Control N to reverse to normals. And that stem is definitely too thin. So how do we fix that? There we go. Let's just reverse that out. And okay, now we're going to add a subsurface modifier, set to 2, select the whole thing and make sure it's set to be smooth. Okay, and then the only thing we'll have to do is to give it a material. We'll call it glass, and we'll call the object glass as well. And then here we will delete the diffuse shader, and we'll add in a glass shader. We are not even going to change it one bit. There we go, and rendering and object mode, and we'll look through the camera. So there's my glass, and there is my cup. And let's see what we'll do. So we'll move this back here, and we'll go Shifty and make another one. Okay, so now I've got my glasses and my cup, so maybe we'll bring this one back up towards us so that it's slightly in focus. Maybe we'll just bring it in there a bit. Okay, so we're going to render that out. So I was going to say, I'm going to go save as. It's called cup at the moment, and we'll call it cup outdoors for a lack of imagination. Okay, and we're going to render this. Now if I render it now, I will get an interesting image, but I'll probably get loads and loads of fireflies, and we'll go have a quick look at how we fix that when we're rendering, and have a little chat about rendering. Okay, so this looks good. This is a GPU render, so it's coming off my graphics card, so it's quick enough. It's not the fastest graphics card in the world, but it is not bad. But as you can see here, there's plenty of noise in this image, and the noise is basically generated when it's trying to work out refractions and reflections, and it's you get it a lot with reflective objects and with glass. So it can be tricky enough to fix, but there are a couple of things that you can do to help. So let's go to our render settings and see what we can do. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to these two settings here. So under sampling, this is the quality of the render, so it's only set to 50 at the moment, so we'll increase that to, if we were only making a sample image, we'd leave it at 50. But I'm going to make a good image, so I'm going to give it a lot of samples, so 500, but that'll probably increase my render time to, I know from, what was this time, let's say it was 20 seconds. This will increase it to 10 minutes. So I'm going to increase that. I'm also going to increase no, wrong one, this one. And sorry, I've got light threshold on here. That is not what I wanted. Hang on. Okay, so these have changed how the image looks. But by playing with this number, I can get back roughly to where I was, and this is to do it in direct light. So and you can see when you put the mouse over it, it's giving you an indicator that this will help with noise. There's a couple other things that we can do if the image is very noisy. So under light paths here, we can turn these guys off, and that will help a lot. So if in conjunction with these, I can probably reduce this a good bit now and not get any noise. So that's what I'm saying, 0.06 and 0.06. No, not that much. Okay. Okay, so that's not too bad. So we've got our glasses, and we are going to now again, to increase render times, we could reduce the number of light paths that are used, and kind of bounces that are used during the render. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this video, I'm going to render this image, and then we'll have a look at the results. So off I go, render. Okay, so this took a little bit longer than I thought, so 6 minutes 36 seconds, but you can see we are firefly free. So we've got a really good quality render out of that, without any unwanted fireflies or unwanted highlights. So as you can see in the cup here, we've got our we can see our environmental lighting. There's a kind of metallic sheen off it. We've used our depth of field. We can see obviously our environment in the background, and we're getting the interaction between that environment and the objects in the scene. And the existing light we have is casting a very mild kind of subtle shadow, but helps kind of integrate the objects onto the board. And that, married with sort of the use of depth of field, gives us a very attractive image indeed. So this is what we'll be doing in class on Monday, and I will see you then.